Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Maria Emanuel. I'm the Associate Director of UNH Innovation, and we're glad to have you here on, fortunately, not quite as a stormy night as it had been this morning. For those of you who are joining us the first time, our office hosts a monthly seminar series, and we explore topics related to entrepreneurship and innovation. And our goal is to provide some relevant information about those topics, whether you're in commercial ventures or research programs, but importantly, an opportunity to connect with other like-minded individuals and have some conversations. For this year's format, we're using an interview style, and today we're specifically discussing innovative partnerships. Our theme for the year is Innovating in New Hampshire. We're looking at various resources to assist in innovation, and today looking at those partnerships. We'll have our moderator and our guests start off the conversation for about 40 minutes or so, and then we'll leave 10 to 15 minutes afterwards for a question and answer period. And then we invite you to stay with us for networking afterwards and appetizers, and the reminder that you need to be 21 and older for any of the alcohol. Before I introduce our speakers today, or our hosts, Scott's going to help me out with the introductions, I want to say thank you to our generous sponsors for the event. First, we want to thank Finch & Maloney, and they are a law firm that provides intellectual property counseling and services for technology companies. They're located in Manchester, New Hampshire. And we have Rebecca Swanwick and Jonathan Raymond joining us this afternoon. Thank you to both. And they're both patent attorneys with the firm. And we also want to thank Divine Millimet for their gold sponsorship. And Divine is also located in Manchester, New Hampshire. They're a full-service legal firm serving both individuals and businesses, and they have a small business team that provides information and services for companies that are starting up and operating, usually in the mid to small-sized range. And Paul Remus is with us tonight. Paul's specialization is intellectual property, and he's an attorney with that firm. Next month's seminar will be on November 20th, and our guest is going to be an innovative alum of UNH. I can't yet say if it's an alumni or an alumnae, but if you stay tuned, we'll provide more details through our website as well as through more email announcements for you. And with that, I just should briefly introduce my colleagues as well. We have Mark Sadam in the back, who's the Managing Director of UNH Innovation. Tristan Carrier on the side, one of our licensing managers. Annie Schofield, our Program Support Assistant. And Chelsea DiGiuseppe, our Marketing Manager in the back. Okay, so for today's seminar, we really want to explore this idea about innovative partnerships. And there's an interesting thought process that companies can go through when they identify that they have an internal gap and strategize about what can they do to meet those needs. Sometimes you can hire additional personnel, you can outsource, you can do work for hire arrangements. There's a variety of things that you could pursue. And alternatively, you can also pursue partnerships, whether it's with a research entity, like an institutional partner, or another industrial partner who's familiar with the areas that you're exploring. But there can be some trade-offs. It might require for a partnership to have less upfront capital, but then there could be questions that arise about ownership, for example, maybe related to intellectual property. So to guide us in that conversation today, our host will be Scott Valcourt. And Scott is, and I have to read it because I get tongue-tied.
That's okay, my family does too, so
yeah.
They don't get it. What do you do? This is what I do. Oh, I don't get that. Okay, so they're used to that.
Well, perfect. So that's going to make my introduction all the better.
Absolutely. Maybe you'll help enlighten everybody too.
So Scott is UNH's Director of Strategic Technology, and he's from the Information Technology Department. And he's had that role since September 2007. And Scott has a really intriguing role where he looks at UNH's IT needs both currently, but then he also has to look down the road at what we need to be thinking about. And it's not only for the campus life, but also for the research and academic programs on campus. So it really covers the full gambit. And Scott says he has two particularly fun, innovative times of year that he's faced with, and that would be fall and spring, when the students come back to campus bringing all the latest technologies, and UNH evaluates how best to support those technologies. So you're thrust right into the thick of it, regardless of whether you wanted to or not.
Absolutely, yeah. September and Christmas, they bring new toys, whether you like them or not.
Yes, and that goes across all channels. Prior to this current position, Scott was the second director of UNH's Interoperability Laboratory, which I know many of you are familiar with. And he was also, let me get this right, a research project manager for UNH's Computer Science Department, where he got his master's. So we've asked Scott to be our host today for this conversation so that we can tap into the years of innovative partnerships that he has pursued, looking at cutting-edge technologies, whether they are for communications between people to people, machine to machine, or bringing those together for people to machines. And so with that, Scott, I'll turn the program over to you, and Scott will be introducing our guest for today.
Thank you very much, Maria. So while our guest is getting wired up, and I'm probably really hot on this microphone, so I'll talk a bit more the way I normally talk, so the sound folks can get organized. I do a little theater in the background for fun too. My shall be fine. I don't have the nice red hair that Conan has, so I'll do my best to be an interesting host or moderator for today's event as we go along. But today's topic is really about innovative partnerships, and I scooted over here, didn't break any New Hampshire or federal laws in driving down from the Northern Community Investment Corporation's annual meeting today, which was at the Mount Washington Hotel, where I was a mere 2.5, 3 hours ago. And the exciting thing that was going on there is the same kind of thing that we're talking about right here. It's innovative partnerships. It's how do people come together and figure out how do we do something different that individually we might not be able to create on our own, but combined, the sky's the limit, and there's all kinds of possibilities. And that's kind of what we're going to cover today is some of the mechanics. How do you get started? How do you make this match actually happen and be a match made in heaven as opposed to a shotgun wedding that nobody really wants to participate in? So to join me today is our guest, and our guest is an exciting person who has a lot of history with many of us here. Chris Dundorf is a UNH graduate of the Civil Engineering Department, but his passion is for mechanical engineering. So like many of us, he kind of starts in one place and moves to another, and we're all kind of interwoven and connected. And for startup companies, that's a good thing because sometimes the person who's writing the code is the person who's cleaning up the trash can or cleaning up the bathroom because somebody stopped it up. And I've been in that role before. I painted a wall because it was easier. Chris is able to hone his interests with his undergraduate research experience in an area that, as we were talking before the event, we actually had a connection to. It's with underwater unmanned vehicles or autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, that was here at the old EMSL, the Marine Science and Engineering Lab. For those of you who've been here long enough, you probably remember the little Quonset hut that was in behind Kingsbury before we blew it up and rebuilt it again, and now it's not there, but the old EMSL. So all of those experiences that he had as an undergraduate sort of led into what would be the role that he would pursue over time, eventually getting involved in a startup company that deals with oil spills recovery. Another interesting thing that's related to what's going on here at UNH today, too. After that company went out of business, too bad, we probably could have used them a few years ago, Chris moved to Klein Associates in Salem, New Hampshire, and we worked as a mechanical engineer there and a manager for a number of years. And while there, he got bit by what's the opportunities out there? And in the height of the recession, like all good entrepreneurs, he said, I'm leaving this stable company, I'm going to create my own. And that's an area that I'm looking forward to hearing about because he started his own company called 2KR, which is currently located in beautiful Barrington, New Hampshire. And tonight we're going to learn a little bit more about some of the innovative partnerships that Chris has had to be able to pursue and work with a number of folks in focusing on the development of one of his company's main products, the snow scale. So Chris, welcome.
Thank you.
So, it was nice to sit down earlier and kind of get a sense of sort of what your background was. So tell us a little bit more about this 2KR company that you've created and the snow scale and how all this sort of came about. Why did you make the jump and say, this is where I want to go and what's my passion?
Well, when I was working at Klein, I was there for about 15 years, and it was a very good job. It was a great job. It was stable. It paid well. I was doing exactly what I wanted to be doing, and it involved doing mechanical design, engineering, a lot of field work, where we would be taking concepts and then morphing those concepts into an actual prototype. and taking them out to sea for testing. These products were all they were sonar related systems used to map the ocean floor, and it was a great job. But I had been there for about 15 years, as I mentioned, and I realized that I could easily be there for another 5 or 10 or even 15 years, and time would just keep kind of going on. Not that it was bad. It wasn't bad at all. I was just looking for something different, something more, and realized that what I really wanted to do was to be working really in my own company, working on products that I had a little more control over as to where they went, and realized that really the way to do that was to leave Klein. And so you're right. I did leave. I left at a time when many people were just thankful that they had a job. But there is an interesting story though how that came to happen. I don't know if we should get into that right now or
Sure. Go ahead. Yeah. Plenty of time.
Yeah. Well, I can be kind of long-winded on stories, as some of you know. So I was off seeing some friends who work and live in the Catskill Mountains in upstate New York, and one of them works for the city of New York, and he was responsible to monitor snow levels, because those snow levels would directly equate to how much water could be expected to recharge the water supply system that spring when everything melts, when the snowpack melts. So in talking with him, he was telling me about how they're currently going about doing their snow measurements. And it was a very manual type process, but they were looking into some automated systems, but they were very expensive. And they took days to set up. And so he was telling me about that system, and I'm thinking, we can definitely do something better than what he's doing. So we spoke about it some more that weekend, and when I got back to New Hampshire, went down to my shop and pulled out some plywood and actually built a sensor that could be used to measure how much water is in snow out of plywood and some other components, and tested it with a snow shovel, just loaded up with snow and started getting reasonable readings, and sent it back to him. He said, "That's great. Can you turn it into an actual product?" And so over the next few months, that's what we did, and turned it into our first product, which is called the Snow Scale, and it's a system that weighs about 90 pounds, and it weighs a portion of the snow, so you can tell how much water is in the snow based upon weight. And the city of New York bought 5 of them, which I was thrilled about, and then they wanted to spend some more money, and they bought 33 more systems after that. And at that point, I was feeling like we could probably make a go of this, and I had one other product going on the side as well. And so one thing led to the next, and formed this company officially, and then set off doing that work.
So thinking about these first customers are there, and they're excited to get started working with you, and you're doing this before you had a company that existed, right? The Snow Scale began as a project, as an opportunity that you did on the side, or is it part of something else?
No, it was something that it was purely a nights and weekend type project. So you got family, you got a full-time job, you got other interests, you got this. I mean, anybody who's had a real passion knows what that's like, where you're just trying to fill every free moment, trying to make something happen.
So what motivated the switch? What motivated I need more time, so I'm going to go to create my own company and maybe replace something with my own company as opposed to the full-time job on the side?
In some ways it doesn't really make any sense. I mean, usually people who start a business, they wind up working, not 40 hours a week, not 50, not 60. They basically work all of them, And so I was looking for a schedule that would ultimately be much more flexible and give me more time to do a lot of other interests I have. And just seemed like 3 weeks per year vacation just wasn't adequate for all the things that I wanted to be doing. So it really is an investment in the future to be taking on a very large workload now, but with hopes that it will someday pay off. But even with the high workload, I'm able to spend more time with my family. It just means I have to work evenings, but it's been good in that it has had a very flexible schedule, or I've been able to have a flexible schedule.
So, thinking about Snowscale being your first product that came out of this opportunity with New York, what does that look like? How does that work? What makes that a unique opportunity that you wanted to drive and go forward with? Maybe share a little bit about what is Snowscale and how that works.
I brought I brought with me some slides. I can show you all what the system looks like and how it got started. So as I mentioned, it started out with it actually started out with a very time-intensive system that was required to be able to measure the water content in snow. And this is the first version that we made that cost about a quarter as much as what they were currently doing, and it uses their weather station that they already had in place. Okay, so this sensor right here is the Snowscale. So this white and blue object that's in the ground, and that's replacing a $10,000 unit that took about two or three man days to install and calibrate. And it's using an existing system here, which will actually gather up the data, store the data, transmits the data via radio. It has its own power supply and its own solar panel for charging. And so this was the whole start of the system. Then as time went on, we realized that we could be using this for more than just a ground-based system, but that there was a need to know the weight of snow in other places. And it was at a time when many roofs, you would hear about many roofs were being heavily loaded with snow. People were concerned about, do I have an issue? Should I be up there shoveling? Is my roof about to collapse like the next guy's? And so we realized we could put this ground-based system up on the rooftop and use it to actually make measurements and report to the building manager or the owner what was going on up on the rooftop, to help them decide, should I shovel? Should I not? You know, is there a trend coming up where there might be more snow on top or more rain? Should I be acting now, or is everything okay? So we realized that the Snowscale could be used for two purposes: for the scientific purpose of measuring the water content in snow for water resource managers, and also for flood risk assessment, or we could put it up on a rooftop and use it for a whole new market. So that's what we're doing right now with the Snowscale. And the challenge was to go from a system that was very complex with all of these components. You can see an antenna here, you can see two solar panels because one wasn't adequate. There's a battery in here, a charger. And we realized that if we're going to put this up on rooftops and sell it to that kind of customer as opposed to the scientist type customer, we had to make it a turnkey system. This is just showing you some images of flat roofs. So these are the kind of roofs that we're looking to put the system on. These are some of the things that can happen in the winter. These three photographs here show you what a roof collapse looks like. Just picture the roof caving in. and this room filling up with snow, and then the snow melting and running down the hallway and going down to the next floor and the next floor. Okay, it would shut down this whole building. Everyone would have to leave until all of the snow was cleared out, all the water damage was cleared out, it was structurally repaired. So it has a major impact on what happens in the building. And to clear the roof,
Okay.
two people who are tied in with a harness, and they're shoveling it by hand. That's pretty normal. So it's a very labor-intensive project to clear the roofs. And
putting those people up on the roof, if it's a membrane roof, that's probably now introducing a whole pile of other dangers, like a shovel sticking and nicking a hole in the roof, or somebody stepping in and causing a hole, and now we potentially have leaks. Even though you're trying to prevent leaks, you've got a whole extra set of situations going on up there, right?
we were speaking with one retailer last year, and he told me that their company, it's a large retailer, they spend 10 to 12 million euros a year dealing with clearing roofs and repairing damage from leaks that they themselves caused. So it is a serious issue, not only the load of the snow, but just the effect of trying to remove the snow.
So your snow scale marketing plan has a pretty compelling story to be able to tell that says you could save a lot of money by just investing in monitoring what's going on up there.
Well, that same retailer told me about one storm event. One clearing event rather. They spent $60,000 to clear the snow off one time. So they had a huge crew up on their warehouse, spent $60,000, and he said, "Chris, I didn't know if I should do it or not. There was a building nearby, it was a Walmart, and that roof collapsed, and he felt all this pressure to respond, and he didn't know, do I have a problem or not? And he decided, I'm just going to play it safe, and he spent $60,000 to clear the roof once. Okay, so the idea of this system was to help give building managers the information that they need to make good decisions. Okay, with something more than just walking up and say, wow, there's a lot of snow here. But to give them an actual number of, you've got 30 pounds a square foot, or you got 60 pounds a square foot, or you got 90 pounds a square foot. So, as I mentioned, our challenge was, how do we take this system that was really meant for scientists with their weather stations that they already have, and how do we turn it into a turnkey product, something that someone can take out of a box and set it on the roof, maybe assemble a few things, hit the on button, and it just works. So that's been the biggest challenge with this whole project, is how do we do that? Because there's so many systems that all have to work together, hardware and software. And the idea is to put multiple stations up on a rooftop. So if you've got a huge warehouse, you might put 5 or 10 of these spread out in key areas. I think I've got a slide a little later on that shows it laid out. They all have to send their data to one common point, and then we need to be able to then use that data in a way that makes sense. You need to be able to visualize it. You need to be able to get the data to the key people, okay, so that they know what's going on.
So to go from your original snow scale design that you used in New York to this new vision, is this all you? Do you have all the knowledge to make that happen and make it all go from one to the other, and that's what's going to be your basement project, or is there something else involved here?
Well, we have this was more than I was able to take on myself. It was more work than I could do, and it was outside of my skill set. I'd done some programming in school, but I'm not a software person. I've done some circuit design, but I can't lay out whole boards. I've done all of the interfaces to boards and wiring and cabling and mechanical design, but there were clearly certain areas where I was coming up short, and I really needed help. And so I reached out and started looking for opportunities to get that help. And I don't know if this is a good time to talk about NHIRC or...
This is a perfect time to talk
Okay,
about the
okay.
New Hampshire Industrial Research.
Yeah. About a year ago, I started looking to see what kinds of opportunities there were to get support, and I came across the NHIRC program where they can provide you help either through faculty or through staff to work on a project. It could be research work, it could be just doing tasks, it could be both. And I said, oh, this looks pretty interesting. And so that's what I started to pursue. And I met with faculty, staff at UNH Durham and at UNH Manchester. I see in the back row we have Manchester Professor Mahila Sabin, who was one of the people who I contacted, and after meeting with both groups and looking at what kinds of resources they had available, we decided to go with UNH Manchester, and they had a number of students who were ready to work on this project, both helping to develop the electrical components as well as the software components. And the software breaks down into two sides. One is what goes on inside here on this board, and the other is what everyone else sees, so the user interface. So if you want to find out what's going on your rooftop, you can log into your laptop, or log onto the website on your laptop, or your desktop computer, or you could use a smartphone, or just a regular cell phone to receive text messages of what's going on. So there were a lot of areas that we really needed assistance with. Up until then, 2Care Systems was doing mostly mechanical engineering and some wiring and basic electrical type engineering, but nothing this complex. So some of the key components that we had were trying to shrink everything down that you saw in that field picture down into a single circuit board. Okay, so all these functions that were multiple boards, shrink it down to one board because it had to be simple and it had to be cost effective. So you can see what the snow scale looks like, and what we've added is this mast, and this right here is a solar panel on one side, so it's south facing. So it's a fully self-contained system, battery powered, and on the other side of the panel is our enclosure, which holds the power supply and the main circuit board. So this process has gone really quite well. We have 2 electrical engineering students. One has graduated, one is about to, and then 3 software students who I think they're in their final year, I'm quite sure. And the first goal was to get the circuit board developed. So like most circuit boards, we start out with what looks more like a benchtop project. Okay, and once we get the system functioning on the bench, we can then take it into an actual circuit design, and that's where we're at right now. So we're actually transitioning now into the circuit board design. We hope to have them built within the next month. So that's the hardware end of it, and this circuit board will handle all of the tasks that is needed. It will actually monitor the sensor, send out data, recharge the batteries, it will store data, it will perform all these tasks. This just shows you what the rooftop looks like with multiple stations on top. And the next part is where the 3 software students have come in. This is our user interface. So when you log onto your desktop computer, this is what you'll see. You'll see an image of your building, and then you'll see each of your sensors here. Okay. This is this tells you what's going on up on your rooftop. Okay. And you can add contacts here so that certain people will receive messages every hour, every day, every 5 minutes if you want. You can send them an email, you can send them a text message when the snow load gets to an unsafe level, okay? And even if it gets just to a warning level. So you've got different options of do you want to know when you're at the red line, or do you want to know when you're at the orange line? Yes?
New project.
Building owners know the snow load that they're building. UNH Manchester, the old mills, do they actually know what the rated load is? I know it's not.
I would say a lot of people don't know, and they when it just starts getting really deep, that's when they might actually call someone in.
But sometimes deep snow is dry snow and doesn't have any weight, right?
That's right. So it's not just depth, but it's the moisture content of the snow as well. 1 inch of ice weighs about 5 pounds per square foot. Okay, 12 inches of fluffy snow might weigh 3 pounds per square foot. Okay, so it's not just knowing that there's a lot of snow or a little bit. What is the snow like? Is this a real dense snow? But I'd say most people don't really know. They might start to think about it when they see that the sprinkler heads are being kind of pulled back up into the ceiling or being pushed back down. They start seeing some sags, water pooling, things of that sort. So.
By that time, it may be too late.
Yeah,
Close to too
yeah,
late.
that's right.
I love this project. I love what you've all been able to do together, both the university folks as well as with your company folks, to pursue this and make things happen. And you're about to get a new microphone because I could tell your battery was getting pretty low. So I'll stall, as they say. Can you tell I spent a couple of times going on Fred Coker's show? Yeah. So we get used to that sort of thing, although I'm not going to do a one-take Coker, because that's pretty tough. Yes?
Question for you. If we have questions along the way, do we?
Yeah, let's make this interactive. Let's go through, because I'm gonna start talking a little bit more about the partnership piece now that we've got some of this background in place, and that's where I'm looking for your feedback too.
I'm curious about your work with students. You said that you're just about to finish. You're just about to go from the development board to the final circuit board.
Yes.
When did you start working with the students in terms of the first phase of development of that board?
Yeah, I think it was in January that we started.
And then on the software side, is the website launched, or is that are the software students still developing?
They are.
the
They are.
interface and all that?
Yeah, and so we speak every. I think that's sounding better, isn't it? A little bit louder. We meet weekly, and it's very close right now. But it's the type of thing, though, that it's not a website which is open up to the public. It's more if you own a system, that's when you would see it. Okay, and I'm sure we'll have something on our website that will have screenshots like this that will let you see what it looks like.
Have the software students also been working on this since January? Did they have to wait for hardware before they could start developing software?
No, we actually got them started right away. So there was so much to be doing with just trying to lay out what is it going to be. Before you actually create any code, you want to first determine, well, what are the functions? What are the goals? What does it need to do? What software do we use? What platform do we use? So something that goes, from just a very simple sounding thing. Oh, I just wanted to do this. I mean, there's so many layers behind that just to get to that point.
So it's been since January, so you're very, very close with the software and hardware.
Yep, correct.
And that project is the NHIRC project that started in January, right?
Yep,
Yeah,
correct.
So that will go until December. I think it's a one-year
Yep, that's
project.
correct.
Yeah.
Yep, and also during that time, we received money from EPSCoR. Okay, so it's we're funded by both the NHIRC and an EPSCoR grant. So both of those have helped us get to where we are and to help us finish where we need to go.
And
NHIRC is being funded
teachers about it.
Absolutely. So let's kind of talk a bit about sort of how you got into that at that process, the whole partnerships idea. What makes a good partnership, a good innovative partnership that, like this particular one happened to be?
Right here. That's it. It was the students, really, and also the faculty, and also UNH with the NHIRC program and the EPSCoR program that made it as good as it is. There's a real risk going because I had to put in money from my company to make this grant work. So there's definitely some risk there, and you just kind of put together the best plan that you can. Choose your team and hope that it works well. And fortunately, we've got 5 students who turned out to be really very good. We had a 6th who worked so-so and then didn't really work very well. So the team has shrunk a little bit. Had to make that change. That happens. But it's really been their skills. Also interesting point is I think all of the students are actually older students. They're all in their mid-20s, late 20s. Some in their early 20s, but they had all worked elsewhere. So they really understood what it means to work on a real project. And they all had jobs, and that became very clear with the level that they're working at. They understand that this is serious, and that this is something that when they say that they're going to do something, that we need to know that it's going to actually get done, and it needs to work. So not that everything works all the time, but that is always the end goal. So it's really been this team that has made it as successful as it's been.
And from the university side, one of the goals for us is to expose our students to these opportunities that are real world, that really give them a chance to say, well, that theoretical stuff you do in the classroom actually has an application. And in turn, I've seen, both when I was in the IOL and certainly now in IT, when we take a student and say, here's a real project to understand what's going on, they realize, wow, that stuff in class, I actually can use it, and there's a value to it. And then they realize there's stuff they don't know. And they say, wow, I'm going to go back to class and learn that stuff because I want to do it. And it motivates them to go back to the classroom or go back to the research bench and say, I need to learn this so that I can apply it again. And it becomes this cycle of learning, and it's experiential learning.
Right.
And that's one of the, at least for me, when they think about innovative partnerships, especially working with a university, it's the exciting minds and thought processes that students bring to the table that we who may have had a certain level of experience our way are taking new people with new direction in place. And it's amazing what kind of direction you may end up going that you might not originally have thought about when it comes to the process and where we go and how it goes. Why did you think about going with a partnership with the university through one of these, the NHIRC program or the EPSCoR program or whatever, rather than just, I'm going to go advertise, hire a bunch of new people to do the software, hardware that I need, and just bring them on board and say, here we are?
We didn't have the funds to really hire the people that we would have needed to have work on this project. So it was a lack of funding or lack of cash reserves to go out on a new project that we knew we wouldn't be able to sell until we got it further down the road. There've been other products in the past that I have been able to sell before the product is even there, but this was not one of them. Okay, this is something that it was so complex, it had so many layers to it that we really had to have something that we could show this works before selling it. So didn't have the money, and also I think it was that there was no one person that I would want to hire or be able to hire. As you've seen, there's so many different areas that all need to function to make this machine work. I needed a little bit of time from multiple different skill sets. And I think it would have been hard to find that one person who could have done all of it. So that was one other reason why it worked well going to UNH, is because you could really pick from a series of students and get not just students but faculty, and get all the skills that you needed to make the picture complete.
So pulling together that team, you had a nice source to be able to draw from because there was such a broad collection of disciplines and experience, and expertise,
and
all in one,
right,
one-stop shopping, so to speak.
And I didn't realize it until I really got into it. The software, as I was first thinking, the software is it's just software. You just need one good software person. And then I realized, as I mentioned, that there's the software side of what the user sees, and then there's the software that goes into the actual circuit board. Okay, so those are two different areas. It's not the same language. It's not done the same way. One is working on this schedule. One is working on that schedule. Users don't see this one, but users see this one. And then within the user interface, that can be broken down even further to the front end, that people directly see the style of the website, what fonts, how it's laid out, where the buttons are, where the switches are. And then there's the part of the software that talks to the database. And then there's the back end, which gives the database to the rooftop stations. So there are all these sub-layers. I had no idea that they were even there until you get talking to people and they're like, well, we need this, we need this. I'm like, whoa, hold on here. What is that? What do we need? Is this one person? Is this two people? Is this a week of time or a month of time? And that's, through that process, you realize how many different skills are needed to pull everything together.
I joked at the beginning of our session about whether this is a shotgun marriage or if it's a marriage made in heaven kind of idea, but this whole idea of partnerships involve this aspect of communication, of getting started, and unlike the dating scene, what sort of things did you have to do to make this partnership become something that was fully understood between all the parties, yourself and the university in the case of that partnership, but that in any innovative partnership, what sort of things do we need to have in place to make sure that it's going to be successful? How do you get started in launching into that kind of engagement? You started by interviewing faculty and kind of getting a sense of what that was all about, but what else happened as part of that? You interviewed them and then you walked away, or what resulted from that to lead to the eventual direction that you went?
It was meeting with the faculty, and it was also the use of a whiteboard, where we actually went up to a whiteboard and just started talking about ideas. Because part of it was I didn't know how the whole system should work. I don't know, should we speak to the rooftop stations using Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or Zigbee or VHF, or what format should we use? So we started talking about that. So it was just the process of discussing it that gave me a little better understanding of the people who I might be working with, what their skills might be, what they might be able to bring to the table. I wanted to know what kind of projects they'd worked on. How similar was it to this? So a lot of it was just having these interactions to not only discover what the project might be, but to also discover what these stakeholders might be able to bring to the project.
Yep.
Also met with some of the students and got to hear what their backgrounds were, the kind of projects that they worked on. And after a while, I started getting a very, very comfortable feeling like, I think we can do this. I think we can make all the things work that have to work.
Glenn, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm not a plant for the program.
Truly, he's not.
How did you source the faculty with whom to speak in the first place at UNH?
Right.
In Manchester. And did
Yeah, like
NHIRC suggest people, or did you know people already? How that work?
I had a little bit of experience with this about 2 years ago. I was working on an SBIR, actually an STTR grant, National Science Foundation, and we knew that we needed an educational partnership to make that grant work. And so I got used to making phone calls, cold calls to a department saying, I need somebody with the following skills who has time to work on this. Do you know anybody? I'm like, well, I can't do it, but try so-and-so. And so I use that method with finding partners here. Although there was one person who was suggested by the NHIRC, my contact there, and she said to contact this person. He was an engineer, and he was very eager to work on the project. And I did speak to him, and felt it wasn't quite a good match. So I just went from there and just started making phone calls to various departments, and received numbers of names of people to talk to, and you begin to kind of get a picture of who's there and who's willing to help and who has bandwidth, who doesn't have bandwidth. So that's really how it was. There was no, there was no set method of how to do it. It was just make a lot of phone calls, and try to meet as many people as you can within the time frame that you have.
Kevin had a question?
I was just going to ask about in terms of the partnership, were the things that you had to discuss, like how did decisions get made, like who decides, I don't know, what the students are doing or what Maham is doing or whatever? I mean, are there some kind of discussions along those lines that you had early on, or did you just kind of?
That's a great question, and I think it was. I think it's actually pretty informal, but it's worked well. And what we're doing was pretty much making sure that the students could contribute, say, 10 to 15 hours per week, making sure, like, I need at least that much from you. If there's more work for you, you can certainly do it. But that was the main thing, was making sure that they had the time to put in. The last thing that I wanted was someone who's all enthused about it and then doesn't do anything. And that actually did happen with one of these students, where he talked a good talk, or talked an okay talk, and but he just wasn't coming through. And after a few months of that, I'm like, I'm sorry, this just isn't working out. But the rest of them, it was a pretty loose in terms of how it was structured. I don't mean that in a sloppy way, but we all fell into a pattern of we meet each week. We meet mostly by using by doing video conferencing. We have a master task list that we all work from, so we all know what the tasks are. The task list has the top level items, and then the mid level and lower level items, and that's what we really work towards. Does that answer the question? Or? All right.
Did somebody over here have a question earlier? I didn't know if that. Okay, good. Well, let me ask a question then. The process you described, this idea of the intense communication, the engagement, the back and forth, the review, that's a similar experience that I've had when I work with companies, where it's understanding up front what are the things we're trying to do, who's going to have what responsibility on the project,
right.
Coordinating that, staying in communication on a regular basis. I even had one project partner that I had who started here and then went to California, and we still met, but one of the things we did here was we would take a walk. We would walk together as part of our conversation and gathering, and then when he went to California, we still took a walk. We wired up our headsets on our phones, and I walked here, and he walked in California, and he'd hear the trucks drive by on my side, and I'd hear the dogs barking and wondering if he was being mauled. But California's a different place, but we still were communicating, and I think that experience of communication, that's part of what partnerships are all about, is how do you get people to talk to each other about what you want to try to achieve collectively, but also understanding what each party is looking to get out of the partnership is important to know as well.
Yeah. Also, people kind of fell into their sort of slots. It fell into their certain roles. Like, there was one person who said, he goes, I'm more of a back-end guy. Okay. Because I'm really not into the user interface pretty stuff. I'm like, that's fine, because I think we need a lot of back-end work, the software behind the scenes. and so that was his job, and he's been doing a great job of that since the very first day. And whereas some of the other people were more into the user interface and the user experience, and they were very good about thinking about the user sitting down and how it's going to be for them to go through the various menus. So people have kind of fallen into roles. Some of those roles have changed a little bit over time, but that was part of it, is finding out what people are, where their strengths are and their interests are. Question? Yes.
You, as the business owner, did you fall into like the project manager role? Did you feel like you were the one who's really driving the momentum for this team, or did you feel like everybody was pretty much part of that momentum?
I think everyone is part of the momentum for the most part. Some of the students have young families, so sometimes the whip has to be cracked a little harder over their head. But I am taking on the role of a project manager, but people are really quite self-motivated, I've found.
I've had a different experience in an HIRC project that I had, where in partnering with the company, they were more comfortable with my taking the project manager role in coordinating the student team and their company players to drive it to a particular outcome and goal. And so I guess it really depends. And that was something we negotiated at the very beginning of the project, was who's going to have what role, and what are they looking to get out of the project? What am I looking to get out of the project with the students or the university? And how do we make it so that everybody is a potential gainer in this project, as opposed to one leading or winning over the other on the other's behalf? Kind of the not so positive thing that happens when you have some kind of like a tick or something on a project. You don't want that kind of thing. Another technique that I've seen is, at least that I've used in the past, is when we start a partnership, when you kind of don't really know who the partners are yet, and you're still trying to feel each other out, is to have sort of a little starting phase and kind of a piece of the project of in the direction you want to go, but enough to sort of get a sense of how's everybody going to work things out together, and at that point reassess and determine, do we keep on going, or, this was a good thing, but let's not continue on. It sounds like you may have had that experience from an individual student worker kind of perspective, but did you have any kind of concept where you sort of started a little bit, tried something out, and then continued on after you knew how things were going to work together?
Yes, we did. On the circuit board design end of things, there were many tasks that were fairly discrete tasks that would fit within a couple of days, maybe 1 week of time, and so people would be set loose on their jobs, and they would come back with what they had found, discovered, came up with questions that they had developed. So there were many opportunities to kind of see how well someone's doing in one particular area, and then if they're strong in that area, then it makes sense to keep them on that area for future similar tasks.
We're getting close to our time, so I want to make sure that if anybody has any questions, to bring them on out there and make sure that we don't miss them as we're going through the conversation. Go ahead.
And one more question.
Absolutely.
Now you're coming to the end of your time with these students. What's your next partnership, and how do you get into the manufacturing phase?
Right.
Or maybe you stay with them, I don't know.
Well, I would very much like to keep using them. That's something that we're starting to think about and starting to talk about. This kind of a product is going to need ongoing support. So hopefully we can work something out where they can keep working on it at some level. The purpose of the NHR, or one of the main goals of the NHRC, is to create jobs. Okay, and so I take that pretty seriously. And not only because that's what the goal of this program is, but that's the goal of my company, is to grow beyond just myself with 2 part-time employees that I have now, and plus 5 students and 2 supporting faculty, and to grow into more full-time employees. So that's where we want to take it. We're looking into what the sales can bring in. Also realize that there's a lot that we want to develop that might fit in well to an NSF grant. That's one other source of funding that we're looking at.
Are you going to be able to like manufacture locally or in the U.S. or do you have an idea?
Yeah, all of the products that my company sells are manufactured in the U.S. Some components come up from overseas, but I'd probably say 95%, maybe even 98% of the components are manufactured in the U.S. We have some products that are used up on cell towers. Those are all manufactured in the U.S. Actually, most of it in New Hampshire. Yeah.
Question?
Doing anything with ski areas? I think there's some interesting places they can use it.
Haven't yet, but you're not the first person to have mentioned that, and that is an area that we would like to pursue.
Avalanche detection.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking more, loads on lifts and things like that. Building loads actually too. It's important to them.
Yeah. We have thought about we have such a great software backbone, if you will. We're starting to think about other ways that we could use all this software that we have developed in other ways outside of measuring roof loads. It's a really pretty nice interface that we have here. Are there other systems that we could be monitoring using these tools that we have developed? If people have ideas, share them with me, please.
Sounds like a nice opportunity to come across Chris after we're done and start thinking about what the future plans are and load those up as potential directions to go. Even when we were preparing for this session, I think I gave you a couple of thoughts that I had in my head that are on that list. And I'm sure we all have that as entrepreneurs where we're thinking about what's next, what comes afterwards, and what is the follow-on work. I know that you've got your current NHIRC that you're working through right now. I've got two, one that's past and one that's current. And both of the companies that I've worked with or am working with, we still work together on other projects. So it's a long-lasting relationship, and a good innovative partnership done right, where everybody's a winner, is something that will potentially have long-lasting benefits for everybody involved. And if we're doing it right, that's the best thing. So I want to thank you, Chris. Chris Dundorf, the founder and president of 2KR Systems, for being here today and for sharing with us a little bit of your experiences on what an innovative partnership is and the snow scale product that you have in place. And I'll turn it back over to Maria to guide us as to what the directions are for the next phase of today's gathering. But thank you. Let's all thank Chris for his time today.
Thank you. Thank you all.